A very long time ago, before cities and roads, before kings and palaces, the world was full of thick forests, wide rivers, and dangerous animals. People lived in fear because the land was wild. They had no tools, no weapons, and no real way to build houses or farm well. Life was hard. Every day was a struggle. Ogun was not born like other people. He came from the spirit world. The elders say he came from the heavens, sent by the gods to help humans survive. He was strong, serious, and always focused. He didn't smile much. His eyes were sharp like a blade. People respected him, but also feared him. Ogun was not a man of many words. He believed in work, not talk. When Ogun arrived on earth, he saw that people were suffering. They couldn't clear land. They couldn't hunt properly. They had no metal, just sticks and stones. So Ogun entered the forest and began to work. He was the first to discover iron. He heated stones in fire, hammered them, and shaped them into tools. Nobody had seen anything like it. He made cutlasses, hoes, and knives. He gave them to the farmers. He made swords and spears. He gave them to the hunters. With these tools, life began to change. The land became easier to farm. Animals became easier to kill. The people were no longer helpless. Because of this, Ogun was called the father of tools. He was also called the path opener, because when the people met thick forest or rocks blocking their way, Ogun would step forward with his iron tools and clear the path. But Ogun was not just a blacksmith. He was also a warrior. One day, war came. A nearby village had attacked. The people ran to Ogun for help. Ogun did not panic. He went to his fire, picked up his iron sword, and walked to the battlefield alone. They say the ground shook when Ogun stepped forward. With his sword in hand, he defeated many enemies. His face was covered in sweat and blood. He did not stop. He fought like he was not human. By the time the battle ended, the enemy had run away. Ogun had saved his people. After that day, the people began to worship Ogun, not just as a blacksmith, but also as a god of war and justice. But Ogun was not perfect. He had a short temper. He hated lies. He hated laziness. And when people made promises they didn't keep, Ogun would get angry. One time, the elders promised Ogun a big sacrifice if he helped them to win a war. Ogun agreed and won the battle. But when the war was over, they gave him a small sacrifice. Ogun was furious. He entered the town square with his bloody sword and shouted, "You promised me more than this!" The people begged him to forgive them. Some say Ogun walked away. Others say he killed some of the liars before leaving. But one thing was clear. Ogun did not tolerate dishonesty. As time passed, Ogun became more powerful. His name spread across villages. Wherever people were building, fighting, or telling the truth, they called on Ogun. They poured palm wine on the ground to greet him. They tied iron chains at shrines to show his strength. But Ogun was also lonely. He had no wife. He had no child. He spent most of his time working alone. Sometimes people saw him deep in the forest, talking to himself, or hammering iron while singing old songs in a deep voice. And one day, something happened that changed Ogun's story forever. That day started like any other. Ogun woke up early, cleaned his tools, and walked into the forest. But something felt different in the air. The trees were too quiet. Even the birds had stopped singing. Ogun was not afraid, but he was alert. He knew the forest like the back of his hand. So when things were off, he could feel it. He walked deeper, past the big Iroko tree, past the river with red soil. Then he saw it. Smoke in the air. Not from his forge. Not from a village fire. It was fresh smoke from a small hut that wasn't there the day before. Ogun walked slowly towards the smoke, holding his machete. When he got close, he saw a woman sitting beside the fire. She was pounding yam with a strong hand. Her back was straight, and she didn't look scared, even when she noticed him watching. "Who are you?" Ogun asked. "My name is Adara," she replied. "I came here to start again." Ogun didn't like strangers, but something about her made him pause. She was not afraid of him. She looked him in the eye, and she had set up her hut with care. Neat, clean, and without fear of the wild animals around. Ogun didn't say much after that. He simply nodded and walked away. But he kept thinking about her. Days passed. Ogun kept returning to the spot, pretending to check the forest. Adara was always doing something useful. Farming, cooking, gathering herbs. She was strong, quiet, and honest. Ogun respected that. One day, she offered him food without asking for anything. He accepted it, but said nothing. The next day, he brought her a small iron hoe. He didn't speak. He just dropped it by her hut and left. That was Ogun's way. Little by little, they began to talk. Not about love, not about feelings, but about life, work, struggles, the forest. They never said they were together, but the people in the village began to talk. "Is Ogun finally with someone?" they whispered. Adara didn't mind. She wasn't after his power or name. She didn't even call him a god. She called him Ogun, plain and simple. For a while, things were calm. Ogun walked during the day and came home to Adara at night. She would tell him about her day, and sometimes he would hum old tunes while fixing his tools. It was peaceful. It was rare. But peace never lasts forever. One season, the rains refused to fall. The rivers dried up. Farms died. People grew hungry. The villagers ran to the king. "We need a sacrifice," the priest said. "Ogun must open the heavens." They brought gifts to Ogun. Goats, palm wine, yams, but Ogun didn't take them. "I don't control the rain," he said. "That is not my work." The villagers grew angry. "But you are our god. You must help." Ogun's eyes burned. "I help with truth, with tools, with war, not with lies." not with pressure. The king tried to calm the people, but things got worse. Some young men, hungry and desperate, went to Ogun's forge at night to steal his iron and force him to act. They thought Ogun would understand. He didn't. The next morning, the sky turned red. Ogun found his forge broken, his tools scattered, his fire put out. He stood there, breathing slowly. Then he raised his voice for the first time in months. "I gave you tools. I gave you protection. You repaid me with theft?" The people began to shake. They knew what was coming. But before Ogun could act, Adara stepped forward. "Leave them," she said. "They are weak from hunger." "They lost their minds. They lost their respect," Ogun replied. Adara walked closer. "If you strike now, you will lose more than your forge. You will lose me." Ogun froze. Nobody had ever spoken to him like that. Not with fear, but with strength, with truth. He lowered his sword. Then, without saying a word, he picked up his broken tools, walked into the forest, and disappeared. The people called after him, but Ogun did not return. For many days, the sky stayed dry, and the fires stayed cold. But that was not the end of Ogun's story. Not at all. Ogun went deep into the forest, deeper than he had ever gone. Even the animals avoided that place. The trees were thick, the ground was wet, and strange sounds echoed in the dark. But Ogun was not afraid. He had walked through fire before. What scared him more was the feeling in his chest, that heavy silence. He missed Adara. He didn't know how to say it, but she felt it. For the first time in his life, Ogun didn't want to be alone. But he also didn't want to return to the people who had betrayed him. So Ogun kept walking. Days passed. He didn't eat much. He didn't speak. He found a small cave near a waterfall and stayed there. He lit a fire, picked up a stone, and began to rebuild his tools, one by one. Hammer, axe, knife, spear. He didn't make them to give away. He made them to remember who he was. During this time, strange dreams began to come. In the dreams, Ogun saw fire falling from the sky. He saw a child standing in the middle of the flames, holding an iron staff. The child said nothing, but kept pointing towards the village. Ogun would wake up sweating. At first, he ignored the dreams, but they kept coming. Then one night, a voice whispered in his sleep, "Your tools are not just for war. They are for building." Ogun sat up. He had never heard that voice before. It was angry. It was calm, strong, and clear. And it shook him more than any battle ever had. The next morning, Ogun packed his tools and walked back. Not to fight, not to burn down the village, but to watch. He stood at the edge of the forest and saw what had happened. The village had turned to dust. Hunger had pushed the people to madness. Fights broke out. The king had fallen sick. Crops were still dry. And Adara, she was gone. Ogun asked an old woman what happened. "They chased her out," the woman said. "They blamed her, said she made you leave." Ogun clenched his jaw. He looked down at the iron staff in his hand. He made it from his dream. He walked straight to the village square. No one spoke. No one moved. They all dropped to their knees. Even the children knew who he was. Ogun raised his staff and struck the ground. Boom! The earth cracked. Then thunder and rain. Heavy, cold rain. The people cried and danced in the mud, but Ogun didn't smile. "Where is Adara?" he asked. No one answered. He walked from house to house, but she was not there. He walked past the farms, past the hills, past the river, and finally he saw smoke rising from a corner of the bush near the old stone path. It was her. She was building a new hut, alone with no help. Ogun dropped his tools and sat beside her. He didn't speak. He just sat. She looked at him. "You are back," she said. "I am," he replied. She nodded. "Will you stay this time?" He didn't answer. Instead, he picked up a log and helped her build, brick by brick. That night, they didn't speak much, but they both knew something had changed. From that day on, Ogun was no longer the god of war and iron. He became the god of truth, work, and rebuilding. People began to see him differently. They still feared him, but now they also thanked him. Before anyone began a project, a road, a house, a new life, they poured palm wine on the ground and called his name. Because Ogun was not just the one who cleared the path with a blade. He was the one who stayed behind to rebuild it. But his story doesn't end there. There was one more battle, not with swords, but with his own spirit. And in that battle, Ogun would face something even he had never fought before. For a while, life became calm again. Ogun stayed in the village, but kept to himself. He didn't visit the palace. He didn't care about titles. His forge was simple. His fire burned quietly. People brought him metal, and he shaped it. They brought problems, and he gave them solutions. But one day, the new king sent messengers. He wanted Ogun to return as head of the warriors. "Your name still carries fear," they said. "Our enemies are growing stronger. We need you." Ogun shook his head. "I am done with war." The messengers begged him. The king promised him land, cows, wives. Ogun replied, "What I build with my hands is more than what you can give me." They left, but not happy. A week later, word came. A neighboring kingdom had attacked. They burned farms and captured people. The king called for warriors, but no one wanted to fight. They were scared. Ogun watched from afar. He said nothing. That night, Adara sat beside him. She didn't tell him what to do. She just asked, "If you don't fight for them, who will?" Ogun didn't answer right away. He stared at the fire. "They blame you," he said. "They threw you out, and now they call me again." Adara looked him in the eyes. "Ogun, your power is not a gift for only good days. Your power is meant for hard days." Those words stayed with him. Before sunrise, Ogun packed his tools. He didn't wear fine clothes. He didn't ride a horse. He walked, alone, with a single iron staff across his back. When he arrived at the edge of the enemy's camp, he didn't hide. He walked straight in. The enemy laughed. "One man? Who is this?" Ogun dropped his bag, and he raised his staff. He didn't speak. He didn't shout. But the wind changed. The sky turned dark, and suddenly fear gripped the enemy soldiers. One of them stepped forward with a sword. Ogun dodged. Quick, clean. Then with one hit, he broke the man's weapon. Another came. Ogun caught the man's arm and pushed him to the ground. They had never seen someone fight like this, like metal itself had come alive. Within moments, the enemy scattered. They left everything, food, weapons, even their king. Ogun didn't chase them. He picked up the prisoners they had taken and led them home. He still didn't smile. He just returned to his forge and continued his work like nothing happened. The king tried to reward him. Ogun refused. "Use what you would give me to feed the people," he said. And then he left. Again. Not in anger this time, but because he knew his job was done. From that day, whenever someone built something strong, they said Ogun is here. Whenever someone told the truth, even when it was hard, they said Ogun walks with you. And whenever someone fought for others, not for pride, but for peace, they poured palm wine on the ground and whispered, "Ogun, clear the way." But Ogun did not die like other men. One day, he walked into the forest and never came back. Some say he became part of the earth. Some say he lives inside every tool that does good work. Some say he still walks the old path at night, watching, listening, protecting. Whatever the truth is, one thing is for sure. Ogun's story is not just about iron and war. It's about truth. It's about duty. It's about building something strong, even when nobody is watching. And that story will never end. Even though Ogun is no longer seen walking in the forest, his spirits is still very alive, especially among the Yoruba people and in places where Yoruba traditions have traveled, like Brazil, Cuba, Haiti, and Trinidad. Till this day, whenever someone lights a fire in a blacksmith's forge, they greet Ogun. Whenever a sharp tool is made, a knife, a hoe, a machete, a sword, they pour palm oil or palm wine on the ground first and say, "Ogun ye." That means Ogun lives. Blacksmiths call him their father. He was the first one to bend metal with fire, the first to use iron to help people. Ogun ye. The path is clear. Please like, comment, share this video, and subscribe to our YouTube channel for more educative and inspiring stories and myths. Until next time, this is Folktales by Fayoke, where history comes alive.